Good afternoon, everybody. Well, so rightly mentioned about an important aspect of drawing economies of scale, at the same time having a complete solution for public safety, solution for security, solution for disaster management. I think the most important aspect is about information, access to information. It's basically a perishable product. It has to be accessed at the time when it has its value. That's where a communication platform comes into existence. You have to have access to information at the right time to make better decisions for better outcomes. Looking at a snapshot about the fundamentals of mission critical communication, it's all about having that one call go through. That's the difference between life and death at that moment of time. Giving you a case study about a typical scenario, the hurricane of Andrew in US in 1992. It was one of the major disasters in terms of natural disasters in US. Entire communication network was down. Power lines, infrastructure, everything was down. How to communicate? There was no way. That is when, in the aftermath, when it was realized that you can't depend upon the commercial existing networks, say a GSM, CDMA, or a cellular kind of a network, for communicating at that point of time. You need to have a separate infrastructure which is meant for use for such scenarios. Ownership and having a private network, I think that is where it comes forth. It could be a natural disaster, or it could be something kind of a bomb attack. We already have seen how it happened in recent times in our country as well. It's typically known that at such crucial junctures, your networks clog. You can't depend on a GSM network to have communication go forward between police personnel at such times. The critical aspects of fundamentals of mission critical communication, coverage. You need to have a comprehensive coverage. As I mentioned, you can't have a part of city covered and the remaining part not covered. Capacity. It has to have you to handle across the entire user base on that structure. And one important aspect, which I was earlier listening to, interoperation. In a country like India, as complex as India, you have different agencies, fire, medical, police, you name it. At least I can talk about 20 agencies which come into action at that point of time. How do they interact? How do they communicate? Each one might be having a separate communication system. Each one might be having a separate set of devices. So what comes across over there is a barrier of actually technology. I think that is where the important criteria lies across of having an interoperation between these agencies so they can effectively communicate, collaborate, and reduce the response time at that crucial juncture. It's already, we already have seen how it happened in 9/11, and one of the crucial aspects from 9/11 as well as other different forums, what has been understood is that commercial networks are not suited to support the requirement of a public safety or a disaster management agency. Something as simple as a new year, your SMSs don't go through, your calls don't go through. Just imagine on that kind of a network, if a disaster happens and you have a police personnel trying to call across on a GSM mobile, the call doesn't go through. Is that acceptable to us? It's a question of life and death. That's a classic case. We already have seen it in as recent times in Mumbai. The infrastructure was down. There was no communication available. There was no information that could be shared across. No information, no control, no command, no communication. I think as I mentioned across, we are looking about different agencies. So classic model could be built around the aspect of having an infrastructure which could be used and shared by different agencies within the framework of public safety and disaster. So PPDR, as is commonly called across, public protection and disaster relief. That's the terminology identified by ITU, where you have the public protection group, which are the ones for law and order maintenance, security aspects, helping people maintain the law and order and protecting the human life. And disaster relief is the agencies which have to handle across the exigency scenarios, man-made, artificial, natural, and so forth. I think that is where a government radio network comes into picture. It's basically nothing but a single infrastructure set across by government wherein different agencies like fire, medical, police, they all can actually use a common platform. I mean, the advantage is that you have an integrated command control center, which can actually be utilized by all these agencies to effectively communicate with each other. You're not talking about one guy using a Wi-Fi enabled device, one guy using a GSM enabled device, one guy using something else. I mean, technology is for the benefit of us, not to act as a barrier for us. A classic case has been the Delhi GRN, which we have implemented. It's again a shared government radio network, and it's a classic case of PPP, where we have actually partnered with the HCL, and it's a public-private partnership project. It's covering the whole of Delhi. It's been utilized by not just Delhi Police, but as many as 17 other agencies. You have the Delhi Jail Board, you have the NDMC, you have fire, ambulance, you name it, and you have it. So what actually it brings upon, which was actually evident in the Commonwealth Games, that these agencies could actually communicate to each other. Because there is definitely an overlying communication requirement between these agencies. For example, giving a small instance, a DTC corporation which was handling the transportation of all the athletes in CWG, they had to communicate with police. They had to communicate with traffic cops on the road. They had to communicate with medical services teams. How do they communicate? Dependency at that point of time, before the network came up, was just a GSM handset. So that's, I think, how the picture stands across for us. So there's definitely a need of such networks to be set across, which on one side are based upon an open technology platform, such that it is future-proof. You're not getting binded by one technology or proprietary standard. You can scale it further, and it's based upon the latest technologies of IPs and so forth. Digitalization has given us a lot of benefits. I mean, if I talk about in a country like India, frequency, that's the most scarce resource that we all know now. I think it has to be a technology that can give you a benefit of frequency efficiency. Encryption, secure network. I think that's the most important underlying factor for a public safety network. It has to be absolutely safe and secure. And something on which you can lay value-added services. We're talking about data today. I think I keep hearing data as the next voice. It's no longer about just basic voice. It's about getting data, things like video streaming and so forth. So you need to have a technology platform on which you can actually lay upon these kind of value-added services. Just a snapshot of two classic standards and technologies which are prominent across the world, TETRA and APCO P25. TETRA stands for Terrestrial Trunk Radio. It's from the ETSI stable from Europe and based upon TDMA standards, while APCO P25, Association of Police Commission Officers, Project 25, comes from the US side based upon FDMA. It's a TIA child. It's already, these both are proven standards. We're talking about as many as 400 to 500 systems deployed across the world for both APCO Project 25 and TETRA. And we're talking about nationwide networks. Giving an example, there's a network in the country of UK. It's almost like 4,000 sites covering whole of UK. But what is the advantage? From north to south, east to west in the country, all agencies can communicate with each other at any point of time. There's a very effective communication that's going between them. Where do we see going forward? I think the future lies, like I was talking about, is in about data. We're not just talking about voice any longer. I mean, voice has become the fundamental requirement. So yeah, we can't ignore that. But at the same time, there's a need for data. Data to be sent across on-road to a control center, on-road to on-road. So that's where I think the concept goes forward. So I mentioned about video analytics. That's a very important thing. I mean, putting across CCTVs is important, but again, do they function to the requirement? That's the important thing. Workforce management, having an integrated command control center which can interoperate with different subsystems. And finally, devices. You need to have a single device for a person. You can't give a policeman or a government security agency 3 devices to handle for different operations, different things. There has to be one device which can do everything for you, starting from voice to data. And plus, these devices have to be such that they can operate with the demanding and challenging environments of public safety and disaster management. To conclude, where do we see going forward? the domain of mission critical communication, we're talking about seamless connectivity, giving real-time information in the hands of the user who are actually on the ground. I mean, as we say, without control, without command, you can't have control. And without communication, you can't have command. So as such, the most important thing is to have an effective communication system which is mission critical grade. Thank you.